Hi, I'm Barb from Coach House Designs, and today I'm going to show you how to make the spiders on the iBooyah quilt. My first recommendation is to cut out all the fabric for the large and small spiders as set out in the pattern, and then make little labels like I have here. I've taken scrap pieces of paper and I've written the dimensions of each of the pieces on the labels so that when I'm putting the blocks together, I don't have to figure out which is which, and it's a bit of a time saving. And that way you know for sure you're working with the right size piece, because a lot of them are very similar. Okay, so step one for the large spider block is to join the 1.5 by 3 inch fabric 3 rectangles to the right and left side of the 1.5 inch fabric 4 rectangle. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put these 1.5 inch fabric 3 squares on the ends of the 1.5 by 6.5 fabric 4 rectangle. And in my instructions I say to draw diagonal lines, and if you look on the first page of the pattern, it refers to my demo video where I show you how to avoid using diagonal lines just for a time saving. So what I will demonstrate right now is just doing that. So the diagonal line as shown in figure 10 shows that the line should go this way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to line up this end of the square with this piece of tape that I have on my sewing table, and there's a line drawn down the center of the tape which indicates where the center of the needle goes through the foot. So if I line up this end here with that line, as I sew across, it will give me a straight line on a diagonal. Now this is just a homemade piece of masking tape stuck on here, but you can get you can purchase special tape, washi tape, which you can put on here that has the lines already drawn on them. So they're a little bit nicer to look at and a perfectly straight line. So anyway, I'm going to just sew along here. There's my diagonal line on that side. I'll do the same on the other side. Okay, so I have pressed these two squares back and attached it to the bottom of the figure 9, and then attached the two pieces on the side, the 2.5 by 5.5 fabric 3 rectangles. So this forms the bottom of the spider that will hang down from the string. So I'm going to just put this aside and move on to the legs. Okay, now we've moved on to paragraph 14, and I've got my 1.5 by 14.5 inch fabric 4 rectangle, and these are 1.5 by 2.5, and I'm going to place these on the two ends of the rectangle. Now in the instructions I talk about drawing a diagonal line from the top left corner to the 1.5 inches down the right side of the fabric 3 rectangle. And the significance of that point is that is where the fabric 3 rectangle and the fabric 4 rectangle meet in the corner, so it's right there. So if you mark that point on the fabric right here where the fabric 3 rectangle and the fabric 4 rectangle meet at that corner, then you draw your diagonal line from there to there. Now you don't have to actually draw the diagonal line if you choose not to, as long as you have the spot marked, because then you'll be able to sew from there to there, and you'll have a point to which you need to cross, and then you can line that up with your line on your tape if you choose to do it that way. Otherwise, draw the line from there to there. And so on the other side, you're going to start from the top right corner, and you're going to mark a spot 1.5 inches down the left side again. So that is where the fabric 3 rectangle sitting on top of the fabric 4 rectangle, they cross in the corner, and so you'll get the diagonal line across the fabric 3 rectangle. So I am going to do that now. So I've sewed along the line as indicated in that last portion, and then trimmed the corners off and press them back. So now I have this 1.5 by 16.5 inch piece, and I can now attach that to the bottom of the last section and go on to the next row of the legs. Okay, the first section of the spider is now done. So we're going to move on to right side legs. And if you look at page 4 of your pattern, at the very top, in this section here, it has the right side legs here, the left side legs here, with the rows of each of the sections marked by A to D and E to H. And that will show you how to make the sections for each side of the spider legs. So we're going to begin now with the right side legs. To build row A on the right side legs, you're going to need 2 1.5 by 2.5 fabric 3 rectangles and 1 1.5 by 2.5 fabric 4 rectangle. So we start by placing one of the fabric 3 rectangles on the left end of the fabric 4 rectangle. And we're going to do that diagonal line again. So I've actually got out my Frixion pen, which is by Pilot. And it's a great pen for marking when you're sewing because the ink disappears when you iron it. So I need to sew from the top right corner down to this point here. So I'm just going to mark the point where the two fabrics cross and sew along there. So that's going to look like that, and then I'm going to take this piece and place it here, and then it's going, and so mark this edge here, so when I sew along from the bottom left corner to the point right here where the fabrics cross, I'm going to get a piece that looks like that. So I'll go do that and I'll be right back. Okay, so I've sewn on that diagonal ending in the top right corner there, pressed it back, and now I've got row A. Now I've got row B here. Now if you look at the diagram at the top of page 4, there's 2 row Bs. So I've got a 1.5 by 2 inch fabric 3 rectangle, which I'm going to place on the right end of the 1.5 by 4 inch fabric 4 rectangles. Mark that point where the fabrics meet at the corner, and then I'm going to draw the diagonal line there and there, and sew along there and press it, and this will make row B. Okay, so I've got my 2 row Bs, which I'm just going to put up here. I'm going to put them in order. It says in the pattern to label them, so you could put A and B on here if you would like. And now there's 2 row Cs, so I'm going to do that next. So this is a 1.5 by 3 inch fabric 3 rectangle, and I'm going to place it on the left end of the 1.5 by 2.5 fabric 4 rectangle, just like that. Mark the spot where they cross. This pen's not cooperating. There we go. And then here as well, because there's 2 of them. And mark the spot where it crossed there and sew along the diagonal. So here it is now. I've sewn along the diagonal there, trimmed the corner and pressed it back. And now I've got a 1.5 by 2 inch fabric 3 rectangle, which I'm going to place on the right end of the fabric 4 rectangle and mark the spot where it crosses. Do that for both of them. And then I'm going to sew from this corner up to here on both of them. So I'm left with another leg portion. Okay, so I've sewed and pressed those. So those are both row C's. So I'm going to put them on in the row here, and you can see how you've got the leg and then the bend and then the leg and the bend. So now we're going to do row D. So unlike the previous rows, there's only 1 row D, so you're going to have a 1.5 by 3 inch fabric 4 rectangle and a 1.5 by 3 inch fabric 3 rectangle, I'm going to place this on the right end of the fabric 4 rectangle as shown in figure 15 on page 5. I'm going to mark where the two fabrics meet there, and then sew my diagonal line. Making sure always that you sew right into the corners. And trim that, and that is going to be now my row D. And now I've completed the right side legs as shown on page 4 at the top there, and I'm going to join those rows together. Okay, so I've joined rows A to B, C to B, and C to D together, and we've got the right side legs, which should measure 4.5 by 6.5, and then we're going to attach that to the right side of the 6.5 by 8.5 inch fabric 4 rectangle, and then work on the left side legs. So here is the right side legs attached to the body. And now we're going to work on the left side legs. So we're going to start by putting a 1.5 by 2.5 fabric 4 rectangle onto the right end of the 1.5 by 2.5 inch fabric 3 rectangle. And I'm going to mark the spot where 1.5 inches down the right side, which is where the fabrics meet up, and sew along there. This one onto here, putting the 1.5 by 2.5 inch fabric 3 rectangle on the right end of the fabric 4 rectangle, mark my spot, and sew along the diagonal there. So here is row E, and now I'm going to do the row F. So I've got the two 1.5 by 4 inch fabric 4 rectangles and my 1.5 by 2 inch fabric 3 rectangles, and because it's on the left side, now these go on the left side of the fabric 4 rectangles, and I'm going to mark my spot and sew my diagonal lines there and there. Okay, so here are my two row Fs, which I've placed under my row E. And now I am going to build the row Gs. So I've got the 1.5 by 2.5 fabric 4 rectangles and the two 1.5 by 2 inch fabric 3 rectangles. And I'm going to place these on the right end of the fabric 3 rectangles like that. And mark 1.5 inch down these sides, sew my diagonal line. Okay, and now I'm going to take my two 1.5 by 3 inch fabric 3 rectangles and put them on the right end of the fabric 4 rectangles as shown in figure 17, and mark where it meets up, and then sew my diagonal line there and there. So here are my two row Gs. Now I just have to do my row H by placing my 1.5 inch by 3 inch fabric 3 rectangle on the left end of the 1.5 by 3 inch fabric 4 rectangle, and then sew along the line here as shown as in fabric 19, and then I'm going to join my rows together to complete the left side legs. So I finished the left legs, attached them to the spider body, and then attached the leg and body unit to the first section of the spider, which is actually the bottom or bum of the spider, which hangs from the string. So now we're going to do the front leg section that goes here. We're now going to build the front legs of the spider. So this piece here is the 2.5 by 8.5 inch fabric 4 rectangle, and it's the center of the front legs, the top of the spider's body. So we're going to be working now on the right side. So the first thing we're going to do is place this 2.5 by 4 inch fabric 3 rectangle on the right end of the front part of the body, and we're going to be marking where the fabrics meet in the corner there, and then diagonal line across there. So I've sewed along the line, trimmed the corner and pressed, and now I've got a 2.5 by 3.5 inch fabric 4 rectangle. I'm going to place that on this end, the right end of the front leg and body section. Mark where the fabric 3 and the fabric 4 intersect there, and do another diagonal line from the bottom left corner to the part where I have marked. And to complete the right side of the front leg section, I'm going to place another 2.5 by 4 inch fabric 3 rectangle on the right end here. Mark where the two fabrics intersect there, and then diagonal line across here. So the right side of the front leg section is complete, and now I need to do the same thing on the other side. So we'll start with a 2.5 by 4 inch fabric 3 rectangle, and we're going to place it on the left side of the front section and draw our diagonal lines. And then we're going to add the 2.5 by 3.5 fabric 4 rectangle on the left end. So place that along there. And so our next diagonal line from there to there. So from the bottom right corner to the spot where the two fabrics meet. And the last piece to add on this side, on the left side, to complete the front leg section, is the final 2.5 by 4 inch fabric 3 rectangle, which is going to go here. And we'll sew along there. Now the front leg section is complete, and we're just going to bring down our piece from before and sew that on there like that. So the spider body with its legs is all complete here. Just get this all on the camera. So from the part where the string is hanging from the bum and the legs heading down, and now we just need to do the head. So here is my 4.5 inch fabric 4 square, and I've got 4 1.5 inch fabric 3 squares, which I'm going to put on the 4 corners of the head. Like that, and then draw a diagonal line to turn this into a snowball block. So I sewed the 4 corners on the diagonal, trimmed the corners, pressed them back, and then added the 2 4.5 by 6.5 inch fabric 3 rectangles to the sides of the head, and I'm now going to join that to the bottom of the block to complete the spider block, which will measure 16.5 inches square. So the head's attached to the body, and then the last thing you do to complete the square, or to complete the block, is to attach the 1.5 inch by 16.5 inch fabric 3 rectangle to the bottom of the block, and now it measures 16.5 inch square, and you're done. So to make the smaller blocks, made exactly the same way, just with smaller pieces. So just take your time and try and sew as accurately as possible, and you should have no problem. Hope you enjoyed it.